I don't think so. You did mention Spencer Arrighetti's name, which is a transition to our final topic of the day, where I'm going to let you take another victory lap because your Houston Astros are all of a sudden the favorites in the American League. It's starting to feel like it. They have been unbelievable since June. And I want to run off the numbers from their starting rotation in August because it was pretty insane to see what this group did. Framber Valdez, 1.59 ERA in 5 starts. Hunter Brown, 1.45 ERA in 5 starts. Spencer Arrighetti, 1.95 ERA in 5 starts. Usei Kikuchi, 2.57 ERA in 6 starts. Ronel Blanco just dragged the staff down, 4.07 ERA in 5 starts. And then you had Justin Verlander, who made a couple starts, 5.4 ERA. That rotation, all of a sudden, early in the season, go back to old Who's Better episodes. I was telling you they didn't have enough pitching, and you were saying, the Astros are going to figure it out. Well, guess what? They figure it out, and they have a surplus in that rotation all of a sudden.
They've been working with a 6-man rotation here for the last 2 weeks, and they can continue to do that to keep their arms fresh because all 6 of the guys in their rotation have been really good. They've been really strong and solid. And this is a winning organization. When you have a winning organization, you can develop players at the major league level. It's not something that every team is capable of doing, but when you can do that, like the Astros, you can find a way. Even when it's always been the story of the Astros where you look at their farm system, at least over the last 5+ years, and you say, where are the guys? Who are the guys? And yet they're still able to produce these kind of players because they get better once they reach the majors. And we're seeing that now with the Spencer Arrighettis of the world and Ronel Blanco, who came out of nowhere. So this is an organization that has found a way to win. And even when they're not winning in April, you need to believe. Let this be a lesson to a lot of people out there that if you have a winning organization, if you have a club that has won a lot of games in the past and continues to, again, produce players almost out of thin air, it's okay if you get off to a rough start, especially when you have a core group of players, a core group of veterans that can be patient and say, you know what, it might take until the final week of the season until we get it going. In the case of the Astros, they didn't even have to wait that long. It was the middle of August, and they were dominating the American League West. And that is the difference between an organization, an entire organization that has things figured out like the Astros, and one in the Mariners where maybe it's only the GM that knows what's going on. And even then, you may have to question Jerry DiPoto because the Mariners have not figured it out. The Astros 100% have.
They've done it. They've done it. It's been an incredible run for them. You always know with the Astros what they have when it comes to the championship pedigree, particularly with some of those guys in the lineup with Altuve, Alvarez, Bregman. Now hopefully you get Kyle Tucker back here soon. The longest shin contusion ever, which now we found out. Oh yeah, you want to know why Kyle Tucker's been hurt all year? He has a broken shin, not a shin bruise. So that's been an incredible thing for them to overcome. We were talking early this season, Kyle Tucker MVP. That's how good he was. Without him, they've gone on this run. To get him back, that's going to provide a huge lift down the stretch. And we knew that they were going to have a good bullpen. They always do. Bringing in Josh Hader was supposed to be that one thing that made them so much better. Now that bullpen looks good. They are so set up to make a run here. And it's just crazy because now I went from saying, I don't think they're going to win this division. I don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs. They're saying, I don't know how they're not going to end up in the World Series. They have gotten to the point where on paper, they just look like they have everything they need. And when it comes to that playoff rotation, I don't know what they do. I know Framber Valdez will start game 1. I imagine Usei Kikuchi is going to start a game because they traded a lot to get him and he's been very good. And I think Hunter Brown is probably going to grab a start as well. He is one of those guys that was a top prospect, nationally considered that. But a 5.09 ERA last year kind of took a lot of that away from him. Started off this year rough. Now he's got a 3.55 because he's been so good. I think Brown gets a start, but who that fourth starter is, Verlander, Arrighetti, Blanco, I don't know. I imagine Verlander, but I really don't know.
Yeah, it would almost have to be Verlander. And as you said, with Kikuchi, that lopsided trade, at least it seemed at the time. And again, it doesn't matter. You don't have to necessarily win a trade and say, well, I got more than you did. It's just you have to feel good about what you were getting. And now you kind of understand what the Astros saw in Kikuchi, making a couple little adjustments here on a guy that's going to be a free agent after the year. But hey, we know what we've got, and we know how to make adjustments to make you better. And he's been absolutely fantastic and a frontline starting pitcher. So yeah, you can go ahead and give the ball to Justin Verlander in Game 4, and then you still got Ronel Blanco to eat up innings if you need to, or Spencer Arrighetti. So they're sitting really pretty right now. With a pair of lefties and a future Hall of Famer and Justin Verlander, and it really looks like the Astros could go and make a really deep run. And as you said, what they're the favorites right now in the American League. I think it makes sense, even without Kyle Tucker right now.
It's funny because I was getting skewed by the numbers, and I've seen the conversation in other places about what do the Astros do, and then as soon as I saw your face when I said who is it going to be, Arrighetti, Blanco, or Verlander, I was like, yeah, it's probably a dumb question. It's going to be Justin Verlander. He's going to be in that playoff rotation, but you're right. They have those guys, the contingency plans. If Justin Verlander gives up 3 runs in the first inning, you can pull the ripcord if you want to, and you have the options to be able to get through the game, without getting a lot of length from Verlander. And I actually did see them talk about this on the Just Baseball show. You could also have Verlander start these games, but even let him know, like, we got Arrighetti to piggyback, so just give us all you got for 4 innings, and you might get a better version of Justin Verlander than him trying to pace himself and say, I got to get us through 7. He doesn't. They have that type of depth with their pitching right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Blanco, I think July and August had an ERA north of 4, so he's starting to cool off a little bit after that hot start. But even still, an ERA just barely north of 4, if that's cooling off, I mean that's still a really good quality pitcher to have in your rotation. So you're right. Yeah, it's October, so Verlander's going to ratchet it up. But when you frame it that way of, hey, we only need this many innings, now that really is it almost takes pressure off and makes your guy that much better. And yeah, it's really making the Astros look to be a favorite in the AL.
Who is the team that is the co-favorite? Is it just the Yankees, the Orioles? I mean, to me, I look at the American League and you have 3 teams that are atop the standings. It's the Guardians, the Orioles, and the Yankees. And yeah, with each of them, there's deficiencies on the pitching side where you wonder how they're going to hold up in October. For the Orioles and the Yankees, there's a lot of questions about their bullpen right now. For the Guardians, their rotation, where that's how we're all of a sudden looking at the Astros differently, saying, well, they got the pitching to do it. Of those teams, is there one you look at and say maybe they're the favorite?
The Orioles were really impressive on the pitching side. Now they scored a decent amount of runs for Coors Field, not a ton, and it wasn't, and none of it really came from the Gunnar Hendersons of the world, the Adley Rutschmans. So they sort of seemed a little bit lackluster over last weekend in Denver. But the pitching was the thing that stood out. Albert Suarez was absolutely fantastic, 7 shutout innings. And then Zach Eflin in his first start off the IL had a perfect game going into the 6th inning. So I think the biggest question mark about the Orioles was something that they addressed over the course of the last year. They needed more pitching. They got Corbin Burns, who's a dude, and they got Zach Eflin to be your number 2. So I can't say that I've watched, enough Yankees baseball to really say, hey, I understand what's going on. And I say it that way because depending on what you read, a lot of Yankees fans are really down on them, and rightfully so, especially when Clay Holmes is blowing saves left and right. But I think the Orioles just have the pieces right now where they would have to also be that co-favorite, but they're probably gonna have to get past the Yankees. And you can't really sleep on them despite the fact that they haven't had, the track record that their name would suggest, because the Yankees haven't been world beaters. They haven't won a World Series or even appeared in one since 2009. So they're not this guaranteed gimme like the Houston Astros are as the number 1 in the American League. I think that's the difference. That's what makes them the team to beat. But if I had to pick a co-favorite right now, it would be the Baltimore Orioles.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you for sure. And I was just looking up Grayson Rodriguez, what's his injury status, and it says that he's throwing a bullpen. So that's the huge X factor for me. If you can go into these playoff series and you have obviously Corbin Burns, Zach Eflin, and G-Rod. Now I look at that Orioles team a little bit differently. So if they can get Grayson back, I think that's going to be a huge difference maker for them. It's kind of interesting. I almost wonder for some of these teams, is it better not to get the bye, particularly for teams that in the Yankees and the Orioles case, who jumped out early this year and were, best teams in baseball, and then have been like playing 500 for a while now. Is there something to be said about getting that momentum in a wild card round where maybe the Yankees get a beat up on the Twins for the millionth time in the playoffs and sweep them, and all of a sudden, like, the Yankees carry a little bit extra into that ALDS? I do wonder if that's going to have any type of bearing on what we see when we get to October.
I mean, that's been the trend so far, is that if you have
Yeah.
to play in that wild card round, it gives you that momentum similar to what the wild card meant back when there was only one, because you had to fight unto the end against a couple other teams to get that top spot of the clubs that didn't win the division. And so I think in a way, baseball kind of maybe went backwards. It's still early. We still have a small sample size, but it does seem that that those teams playing in that first round do have a bit of an advantage going forward.
Yeah, no, it's definitely been the story the first couple years. We'll see how it plays out this year. And you almost want one of these division winners to actually handle business, so it doesn't become that thing. Like, it's like, all right, who's going to finally be the division winner that proves to be the best team? Maybe it's the Dodgers this year. Who knows? The Astros could end up with a bye with the way they're playing. Like, they aren't that far away from it. So we'll see. I believe, just like it's been for most of the past decade, we have reached a point where the Dodgers are the NL favorite. The Astros are the AL favorite. We'll see how they meet, if they do meet in the playoffs, in the World Series. But we got a great race in store for the final couple weeks here, and we'll be doing shows throughout it all. So I appreciate all of you who tuned into the stream today. Follow us over on YouTube, find our Who's Better channel, and subscribe there. Check out the podcast feed. Find us on Twitter at Who's Better BB. We'll be back with another stream next week, breaking down the latest and greatest in the 2024 season.